Hello, and welcome to Solving for the Undefined podcast. I'm your host, Johanna, founder of Miss Kuiper's Classroom, the place that equips teachers and parents in helping students struggling with on-grade level math. But it's not always about the numbers, and that's why I'm here, bringing you the formulas to solve your problems, math and otherwise, and helping students gain confidence in academic abilities. And that's what you can count on. Hello, I am so excited to have you here today listening to my first ever podcast episode. I'm excited and a little nervous. Recording can be a little intimidating sometimes, but I'm excited to share my thoughts with you today. So, I don't know about you, but I love math. And I have many reasons for loving math, including fond memories with my dad doing math after dinner together. Yes, I was that nerdy. I love the consistency and the preciseness, but one thing that frustrates me so much is when people say they hate math. And people's experiences are valid. I understand that. However, I think our understanding of math and our like or dislike is based on the experiences we've had with math. And as a math teacher, I want to present my students with an experience to math that allows them to love it and see it for the wonderful thing that it is. And I think our society has really screwed that up for us. In recent movies and TV shows, I see a lot of math displayed as bad. I was watching this Gilmore Girl episode, and the characters Lorelai, Sookie, and Michelle were in the kitchen, and Sookie was trying to do mental math, and it just was so hard for her to do, and she was shutting down, and Lorelai was like, Sookie, stop. You know how math hurts your brain. And it's things like this that cause me frustration because we are showing people who watch the shows Gilmore Girls and so many other movies and TV shows that it's okay to be bad at math and it's okay to say you're bad at math. Your words have so much power over what you believe about yourself. And showing this to our impressionable people makes it so much harder to reverse that. But it is possible. So today I wanted to share with you 4 reasons that I find that people struggle with math. And the first one is the math is too hard and makes no sense. How often have you heard a student say, this makes no sense, I don't get it? So often. Usually is combined with crossed arms, slouching, pencil thrown across the room. Maybe that's just my classroom. But when a student has this reaction, it's a red flag for something that is happening beneath the surface. One of these things could be a lack of prerequisite knowledge. This is the understanding of things that come before whatever concept they are working on. So if they are working on Pythagorean theorem and they don't know what an exponent is, Pythagorean theorem is going to be so much more difficult without a knowledge of exponents. Another thing could be number sense, understanding how numbers work together. It is a huge piece of what math is, and if someone struggles with understanding numbers and how they work together, it's going to be that much harder in any math concept, let alone something like Pythagorean theorem or linear equations. Sometimes it could be the learning style of the classroom. Maybe you are someone who likes to give lectures and is very verbal in their presentation. But a student is let me see if I can say this right, kinesthetic or visual learner. And just having a verbal presentation of something, a lecture, isn't going to be very beneficial for that student. And there's time and place to do a lecture and all of those kinds of things. But taking that into consideration when you're presenting a lesson to your students will really help them understand the material in the long run. We don't just want a get it done for the test kind of memory. We want something that sticks with them because the vertical alignment or from kindergarten to high school math, maybe even to college math, they need to have a solid foundation in everything. And sometimes what makes the math too hard is something that isn't even math related. I know for middle schoolers, there's a huge time in their life where change is happening in their bodies and in their minds and their chemical hormonal makeup. And so if a student is having an emotional day, that's going to really impact and bleed into their classroom environment. So math is too hard and makes no sense is a reason why students and people in general struggle with math. The second thing has to do with common vernacular. The word vernacular is one of my favorite terms that I learned way back when I was a freshman in high school from a teacher, Mr. Anderson. We were talking about something about Old England and books not being written in the people's common vernacular, something along those lines. But I think it has a lot to do with what we see in the classroom every day. Have you ever had a teacher where they're so good at the subject, you don't understand it? They're so knowledgeable, it's so hard for them to convey it to their students. I had this biology professor in college, and she was an amazing person and was really knowledgeable at her subject, biology. But it was a biology 101 class, and she normally taught the higher levels of biology, but they needed someone to fill in biology 101. And she presented the material as if we already knew all of the fancy academic vocab words that we really didn't know. And so I spent a lot of that semester trying to understand the academic vocab words with a study group, trying to figure out what they meant so I can understand the overall subject. And it was really challenging. It took a lot of brain effort, and it wasn't necessarily fun to do that. The labs in her class were awesome, but trying to understand the material itself was quite the challenge. And math in itself is its own language. It has its own set of vocabulary, the way we say words, what they mean. They mean different things than in the normal English language. For example, the word product. In the world, a product is something that you buy at the store, or if it's a beauty product, it's foundation, eye makeup, something along those lines. But a product in math has to do with the end result or the answer for a multiplication problem. If a student doesn't know that, they might be a little confused. They might eventually catch along with context, but knowing that the academic vocab word product is referring to the answer of a multiplication problem is necessary to understanding the whole concept of multiplication. And especially if a student is an ESOL student, an English speaker of another language, how much more challenging is it going to be to not understand those academic vocab words within a classroom? Not only are they learning English, but they are having to understand math as well with the whole new set of academic vocab. And so if a teacher does not know how to speak the common vernacular, it would be a challenge. Now, academic vocab definitely has its place in the classroom, but there are ways that we can go about presenting that vocab that makes it digestible for students. I have a tendency, and by now it's probably become innate or a habit, but when I use an academic vocab word, my automatic follow-up is to present it in another way. So an example of this would be when we are working with the Pythagorean theorem, and I say, we're solving for the hypotenuse, the longest part of the triangle. I've automatically inserted what hypotenuse means, so that way the academic vocab isn't the barrier for students in learning and understanding how to do the problem. And I go into depth on how I teach the Pythagorean theorem for students struggling with on-grade level math in a blog post that you can read on MissKuipersClassroom.com, so you can see more information about that. Common vernacular is really important for every student being able to understand the material. Now, the third thing why students struggle with math is math class is boring. Math class is not about worksheets. I'm going to say it again. Math class is not about worksheets. Now, worksheets may have their time and place, but for students to really be engaged with the learning and understanding it, worksheets aren't going to cut it. When I approach a lesson in my class, first thing we always do is we take some notes in our interactive notebook. And this is a place where we write the learning target, we write down our notes, we have a little space for summary, and then practice problems that we do together. After we've done that, and even in our interactive notebook, I make the notes engaging. We use highlighters, we use colors, we use different things to help make the notes stand out to us. And then on the practice page, we might go over one example problem and we'll label all of the steps. What's happening here? What are we doing? What's the next step? How does this relate to what we've been talking about? And then I will do things like turn to your partner and work on this problem together. Or maybe we'll do whiteboards. Oh, my students love whiteboards. Pro tip, when you are using whiteboards, give students 1 to 2 minutes of doodle time. Yes, doodle time. It just allows them to get all the doodles out before getting into the math. I have found that it really sets apart the doodle time from the math, and the doodles are less when it comes to the math time. And whiteboards are a wonderful way to input a lot of fun and excitement and something new. I'll write down a question on my mini whiteboard under the projector, and then students will have to answer it. And then I'll say, boards up! And then they'll put up their boards and I'll be like, awesome, 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 awesome. And in the virtual classroom, I do a segment called Show Me Your Math. I feel like Tony the Tiger every time I do it, but my students love it and they think it's hilarious. But what I'll do is I will put up a problem, usually on a shared screen like a Google Docs or something, and I will give like a timer or time limit, and I'll have students complete the problem. And then after that time limit is up, I'll say, all right, it is time to show me your math. And then the students will turn on their cameras if they aren't on already. It's sometimes the only time I ever see their face. And then they'll hold up their answer to the screen. And then I'll check the work. Whether or not I can see it is another thing, but I always pretend I can because they did the work, and it's exciting that they're involved and they're engaging and they're doing the work. So that is just something I do to engage students in online versus in the classroom that kind of relate together. And it's a lot of fun. I think it's an exciting way to do practice problems that they might have done on a worksheet, but they do it in a more fun and exciting way. That is the third thing. If math class is too boring, it's not going to be enjoyable or engaging, because I have never done anything boring that I have really enjoyed. Like, I am not someone who normally would drive 9 hours someplace. But every year at winter break when I was in college, I would drive from Oregon to San Francisco, which is a 10-hour journey, 9 if you don't make any stops and you speed a little, and it could get really boring. The first 3 hours are great because driving through Oregon, there's lots of trees, it's really pretty, it's a little windy, so you gotta be paying attention anyway, and you turn up the jams and you rock out while you do it. But then when you hit the California part, it is a straight shot pretty much all the way down California, which is pretty boring. But when I started making these trips with my then boyfriend, now husband, it got so much more fun. We listened to podcasts, we played games, we slept if you weren't the one driving. And then we started taking it with our puppy. Like, that makes it fun and exciting. We made stops, we did things along the way. It really amped up the excitement of driving 9 to 10 hours. So just adding fun things in, whether it's task cards, scavenger hunts, working with a partner, free seating. Free seating can do magic, believe me. Free seating is magic. But all of those things can increase engagement within the classroom, making it less boring, and students are wanting to learn and are learning. Another thing is having non-math entry points. Non-math entry point being using dice, using playing cards if they're allowed in your school, using a Jeopardy game. All of those things students know and understand outside of the math classroom, so bringing them into the math classroom makes it a whole lot more fun and engaging for them. And lastly, another reason why students struggle with math is it has nothing to do with the math itself. Sometimes students have bad reactions towards a teacher or towards a certain group of students within a math classroom that makes it difficult for them to learn. I love Red Robin. I should say I used to love Red Robin. When I first moved up to Salem, Oregon, it was one of the first places my parents took me when we were moving into my dorm. We went to Red Robin. I had the Whiskey River Wrap, which is freaking amazing and super delicious. Their freckled lemonade, on point. And then for my 21st birthday, we went there as well. I got a spiked freckled lemonade and had a boozy milkshake. I love those things. But then the terrible experience came. We were coming back from a Seattle road trip and we stopped at a Red Robin. I had my Whiskey River Wrap and I got food poisoning. While this might be a small incident compared to all the positive experiences I've had with Red Robin, I have only eaten Red Robin once since, and it's been like 3 years since that happened. One bad experience can really shape how a person views something. So if a student has a bad experience with a teacher or a group of students. Maybe the student had a wrong answer and people laughed, or they asked a dumb question. There were air quotes around that dumb because most of the time there's no such thing as a dumb question. Or they got called on and they didn't have an answer. Anything. Anything can shape the way a student views a math class negatively. And having that bad experience is going to shape how overall in the future students view math. And this is not to say that they will never, ever love math again. There is hope. Through the right experiences, students can change that outlook. And you can be that right experience. Having a fun and engaging classroom, having personal relationships with students. Those are the things that create a math environment that is conducive for learning. And not just learning to do a test, but lifelong learning. It's amazing how just having a relationship with a student can really change how much they learn and understand and retain versus you're the person in front of the room presenting information. So the 4 reasons why students struggle with math. The math is too hard and makes no sense. The common vernacular. Math class is boring. And 4, it's not about the math. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. To find all the links and resources to things talked about in this episode, head on over to MissKuipersClassroom.com and click on podcast. And until next time, I'll leave you with this. Math is fun. It teaches you life and death information. Like when you're cold, you should go stand in a corner, since it's 90 degrees there.